Years ahead of its time.
When McFadden escaped from the orphanage and boarded the freight train, his intention was to find his only known relatives in St. Louis, Missouri. But his destination was sidetracked by his time spent with the Native American tribe. And following this life-altering event, he ultimately found his way to St. Louis. He finally found his family in St. Louis, and he was given a job at a small newspaper owned by his cousin called the McEwen Brick. And it was there that he learned about the power of the press. Using his meager wages earned working at the newspaper, McFadden was able to join a gymnasium, where he became friends with George Baptiste, the strongest athlete at the gym who taught Bernard bodybuilding and wrestling. Baptiste ultimately became a world wrestling champion. In less than 1 year, by utilizing what he had learned from the Native Americans and Baptiste, McFadden transformed himself into a healthy, strong, muscular, formidable athlete. Baptiste urged Bernard to enter a national wrestling tournament as a welterweight. McFadden entered the tournament winning not only the welterweight class, but also the middleweight and heavyweight divisions. Based on this amazing feat, he gained national attention, but he knew he was missing one key element necessary for success. Based on the notoriety gained from the wrestling tournament, he was able to strike a barter deal with the Bunker Hill Military Academy in Illinois, where he became athletic director in return for his room, board, and education. Under his guidance as athletic director, the Academy won state championships in wrestling and football, while McFadden learned English, literature, and science. McFadden met Alexander Whitley, the inventor of a wall-mounted exercise device consisting of cables and pulleys. Whitley offered Bernard a job demonstrating his exercise device at the 1893 World's Fair. Encouraged by his great success at the fair, McFadden felt it was now time to follow his dream to educate the nation on the power of natural healing and health. McFadden moves to New York City. McFadden launches Physical Culture magazine, the beginning of his publishing empire.
Now let's go back to some footage from the original documentary. Bernard McFadden is now in New York, and he started his first magazine that he called Physical Culture.
As sales of Physical Culture grew, so did the size of the magazine, giving McFadden more room to expound on his theories of health and fitness, while venting his rage against what he called the medical monopoly and prescription drugs. By 1903, the monthly sales of Physical Culture magazine were exceeding 100,000 a month and growing with each issue. McFadden now had enough money to make a dream come true, which was the establishment of a total health community with all its residents following the laws of nature. He bought a 1,900-acre tract of land in the state of New Jersey and proceeded to erect Physical Culture City, which, according to the literature, was free from saloons, drugstores, and other vices. McFadden's intent for Physical Culture City was to prove to the world that healthy, natural living can prevent illness and disease without the intervention of surgery or drugs. The initial success was very encouraging, but other forces were at work that would soon interrupt McFadden's success. In 1904, it appeared to McFadden that nothing could interfere with his mission to convert the nation to a healthy land of physical culturists. The growing number of Physical Culture readers were invited to send the magazine before and after photos of themselves to show the progress they had made using McFadden's methods. Obviously elated by the photos, McFadden decided to present the nation's first bodybuilding contest to determine the world's most perfectly developed man and woman. The site of his groundbreaking event would be Madison Square Garden in New York. This would be yet another vehicle to awaken the nation to the power of physical culture. The event was greeted by a sold-out crowd. The contestants in McFadden's Perfect Man, Perfect Woman contest looked much different than you might expect. The women wore a tight bodysuit covering their entire torso, anchored by a sash around their waist, leaving only their arms and legs exposed. The male contestants wore trunks, practically up to their navel. Modest dress by today's standards of two-piece and bikini swimsuits, but this was 1904, when a conservative group called the Prudes were instrumental in monitoring the moral conduct of the nation. Anthony Comstock, a zealous prude, was head of the New York Society for the Suppression of Vice. Comstock openly opposed McFadden's showing of flesh in his magazines and his bodybuilding expositions. In 1905, McFadden began advertising another bodybuilding competition, and Comstock bought legal action on the grounds of lewdness, but the show was held before another sellout crowd. Law enforcement officers were stationed throughout the arena to monitor the propriety of the show, and those wishing to see feminine flesh were disappointed, because all female contestants now wore full-body union suits. Comstock and his prudes were relentless in mounting countless legal challenges against McFadden, his magazines, and his physical culture activities. In 1910, staggering legal expenses forced McFadden to leave his company in the hands of a trusted associate and travel to England.
A pornographer that distributes lewd and obscene content through the mail. Let me read that just one more time, okay? A pornographer that distributes lewd and obscene content through the mail. That's what the Prudes were saying about Bernard McFadden. Let's ask ourselves a question. Was this slander? Or did the Prudes have a point? After all, this was taking place during the Victorian era. There was a time in our nation now called the Victorian era, so called because of the strict morality code enforced in England by Queen Victoria that still dominated the culture of America in the beginning of the 20th century. This drawing shows a shoe store salesman using the required modesty panel that obstructed any view of the female customer's leg. At this time period, I guess you could say that the Prudes did have a point. But do you know what else the Prudes had? A political insider. And the political insider's name was Mr. Anthony Comstock, and he lobbied Congress to pass the Comstock Law, banning all mailings of all materials of a sexual nature. And as a special agent for the United States Postal Service, Comstock confiscated thousands of books and pictures he deemed objectionable. Over 3,000 arrests were made for the violations of the Comstock Law. Now, this cover of a book about Comstock tells how he fought and won the battle for the purity of the nation. Did you know that Bernard McFadden was an advocate for feminism? Probably not, but okay. He felt that he was empowering women to have greater control of their own body, their own health, and the clothing that they chose to wear. At this time, female American swimmers were actually banned from taking part in the Olympic Games due to the immodest swimming attire that was required. In 1906, McFadden began publishing a series of articles in Physical Culture called Growing to Manhood in a Civilized World. This series of articles were meant to warn his male and female readers about the horrors and suffering caused by venereal diseases. And what would appear to be worthwhile information was viewed by Comstock and the Prudes as pornography. So they approached the courts requesting for McFadden's arrest because his magazine contained lewd and obscene content. On October 22, 1907, a federal court in New Jersey sentenced McFadden to 2 years hard labor and a $2,000 fine. However, President William H. Taft commuted his sentence, but ruled that McFadden paid the $2,000 fine.